All right. Do you need any help, Kevin, with anything?
No, I mean, we can keep this pretty casual too. This was a presentation I gave last week, as you could see from Obsession, the base conference. And so the information is still pretty much accurate. So I'll go through this, and then I'll feel free to ask me any questions too throughout the process. But really, this is kind of, what we've done, previously over the past several years. Like I've been running awards programs probably since maybe for the past 10 years. It's gone through a lot of iterations. Mostly what I'll call out specifically for this, there is a process to kind of follow, and you can kind of pick and choose what makes sense for your company or organization. Really depends on budget, obviously, and you could go down and dirty, keep it simple. You could do more advanced. I will say with the Adobe Awards experience, like we spent our budget alone for this program was over $1 million. So just keep in mind, like that's not everyone's budget. We obviously had more to play with. You have to do it based on the size and scope of your team and your organization. But hopefully this will be helpful. I always like to start presentations with memes. You guys probably know that by now, but I would say awards programs are a special type of hell. And usually just because there's a lot of things that you have to do leading up to an awards program from a planning standpoint. And then there's the whole aspect of just getting applications in the door. And usually there is a curve that you have to get past. But once you figure that out, it's pretty easy. And so the components that I'll cover specifically for this is like the 5 phases. There's the planning phase, which is thinking about like what's the goals, the objectives, what is the theme that you want to have for your awards program, what is the overall application process. There's the promotion piece, which is how do you drive awareness, how do you drive submissions, incentives. There's the judging aspect, which is how do you get your stakeholders to think about awards, who do you want to be part of your judging panel. Do you have a scorecard that you're using to check what is considered a 9 out of 10 for someone that should be a finalist or a winner. And then there's the execution piece, which is looking at if you want to do a digital, hybrid, in person. And I still think that's the case even in 2023. And then the post-event wrap up, like what are you doing at the end? How do you showcase the wins? How's it going to help you drive momentum for like the next thing you're doing? And so most of the time I always say, start with the right type of questions you want to ask even before you're thinking about an awards program. And largely, I think sometimes we as customer marketers get asked to do many different things, whether it's like, your CEO made a decision because they were taking a shower in the morning. They say, hey, we need to do an awards program. And so now we need to like get everyone in marketing involved to do it. But I think you have to be very intentional with the process and the approach and giving yourself enough time to execute on it. Typically, I like to recommend at least planning an awards program, giving yourself at least 6 months. 6 to 8 months is ideal. You could do it. You could definitely do it in a shorter amount of time, but I think if you look at just the whole process involved, it could be pretty taxing. And so give yourself some grace as you start to think about just how much is needed to execute on it. And these are just some questions as well to kind of look at from internal teams that you need to engage, whether it's your sales, your marketing counterparts. What is the selection criteria for how you're going to select finalists and winners? How are you going to do the big splash when you announce it? What's your budget? Like that's the most critical thing with all this whole process. And then there's, the general business justification. And I can share these slides after you if you guys want to see it. Feel free to copy it, paste it, use it in your own decks if you need to. But having sort of like, what is the criteria? What's the goals and objectives? I think is really impactful, and have that kind of selfish lens of what do you want to get out of it too. It's not just for your broader company, but what's the incentive for your customer, and what is it going to help you to achieve your goals and your outcomes that you have as an organization. And so what some of the budget elements to consider. Now, this is, if you want to think about it from a best in class experience, you have money to spend and you want to be able to elevate the experience. There's the creative aspects, whether you have in-house creative, people that can help you with the design, the elements, the the look and feel of your trophies down to the table drapes, the stage setting, etc. I usually always try to have some type of sales spiff or incentive. And this is a extra thing as a carrot to give to your field teams to drive awareness for your program, and make it a top of mind thing so they push it to their customers. There's also the awards microsite application, and I'll show you some examples of what that could actually look like. You could obviously go very cheap and use a Microsoft form or Google Sheets. We've seen that through some of the more recent, applications just within our own industry. So, pick and choose what makes sense for you. And then there's the overall experience that your customers, your finance will experience as part of, gift packs or trophies, things that can help elevate that experience when they actually find out that they're a finalist or a winner. And then if you're going to hire like an external MC or host, there might be some costs associated there. There's also the post-event winner series. Like one of the major outputs of an awards program is the collateral, the content that you're able to produce from your customers, whether that's through video, written story, snackable content, the whole 9 yards. Like it's good to have some type of plan in place as far as how much it's going to cost to create all these different types of assets, do the interviews, and whatnot. There's also celebrity entertainment, external hosts. So over the past several years, we had everyone from, Jennifer Hudson to, I'm blanking out on some of the names, but typically just for celebrity entertainment, we spent sometimes upwards of $200,000 just to secure a, celebrity guest. Like that's obviously a nice to have. By no means should that be, what you include as part of your program. But we always try to have some type of element at the beginning and at the end of an awards to kind of close it off and bookend it. And then you have maybe an event production or a person venue, especially if you're thinking about hosting it, at a location. Like this year, I wasn't part of the event, but I had major FOMO because they brought it together this past Wednesday, and they had it in New York City. And it was the first time they actually brought it back from a virtual event that they've had for the past several years and then bring it back in person. It was kind of a cool thing. So I'll talk a little bit about the awards program evolution. And if you guys have questions, feel free to just interrupt me, real time, and just ask me things. But to give you some background, we had the Adobe Experience Maker Awards was a evolution since 2017 when I joined Marketo. And so it was a combination of 3 different award programs. They essentially kind of brought together, actually 4 if you consider the Workfront Lion Awards, but all these different award programs and bring them all together over the past several years. And so Marketo had the former Marketo Revy Awards. And back in 2019, we celebrated the 9th year anniversary of this program kind of kicking off. Magento was another acquired company that Adobe had. They had their Imagine Awards. And then, as I mentioned, like Workfront, we acquired back in 2021. And so the process of the evolution that we went through from 2018 to 2019, we had to basically take 35 different award categories, everything from product-specific categories to recognizing executives of the year, all different versions with that, and boil it down to about 14 to 15 award categories, which this took months to kind of figure that out. But like we had to be very clear with what is each award category, where there's potential duplication, and what are we trying to achieve here. And so as you can see from this timeline, 2019 was the first time that we brought the awards together in one specific venue, location. It was a combination of some acquisitions that we had, but also what is that identity that we wanted to kind of carry forward as we became one company. And so that was 2019. And then in 2020, when everything went pandemic, of course, we had a specific theme for the awards, which was called Stand Up and Stand Out. And then you can see in 2021, it was Time to Shine. And then this more recent year, I forgot what the theme was, but I'll show you an example. And so what actually happened was we had this whole prep process of just consolidation over the next 6 months. We had to kind of think about how do we bridge the gap and make the customer feel like they're part of one experience versus a mishmash of different acquisitions over the past several years. And so this is what it actually looked like. We actually bought out the Beatles Love Theater at the Mirage, and we did a pretty cool experience where, we had the actual cast of the Beatles show, do some fun entertainment things before the award show actually kicked off, and then at the end of it, and then all the winners and finalists could take photos with the cast, and it was pretty cool. And so,
Kevin, did
yeah,
you say if Adobe paid for travel and expenses for the winners?
so we didn't. That's actually a good question. We didn't cover travel for any of the finalists or winners. What we did do was we comped their passes, so they didn't have to pay for the ticket to go to the event. And so it was just they had to fly there, but they could then experience the entire conference. And this was also during our Adobe Summit. So when you think about just your user conference or customer conference, what type of ancillary events do you want to host as part of the overall summit experience? This was something that we did on the Monday of our conference. So it typically went from Monday through Thursday in a given week. So yeah, we only paid for or covered their passes.
Good to know. Thank you.
But yeah, you could see sort of like this is how we had to kind of combine it for the first year. So it was Experience Makers, and then the Marketo or the Marketing Nation Review Awards. And then the following year, what actually happened was when the pandemic hit, we had to shift, and we were planning actually up until everything kind of shut down to do the experience again in Vegas as part of our summit conference. And we basically had 45 days to kind of figure this shit out. And it was the most stressful time, I will say, planning for both the conference and then also the content tracks, as well as through the awards program. So this all happened around I think this was like March of 2020 when everything was happening. But I'll show you a video first of what we actually accomplished as part of that experience. And then I'll show you some of the specifics of what went into on the back end for pulling it off. So let me switch to show a video really quick. And I hope it actually plays through Teams or through Zoom. Oops. Give me 1 second. I'm just trying to figure this out. Okay.
If anyone has questions, go ahead and put them in chat if you want. We can see it, but I cannot hear it.
Oh, okay. I'll send you I can send it to you later.
Yeah, Zoom makes you share there's like a special share your audio thing.
Little checkbox.
Yeah. But it's great video quality with or without sound.
Oh, well, the sound makes it better, but this was like the sizzle reel that we created after the event happened. But you can start to see some of the elements that kind of made it come together. And this was all virtual, like I said, that first time that we had to do it. And every year, we tried to make it a little bit better over time. So let me go back to the main presentation. Okay, so that was kind of the experience. And then kind of fast forwards last year, 2022, the program was called Behold the Bold. So we went through this whole creative exercise. We worked pretty closely with our brand team to establish, the theme for the following year. And this is what it was last year. They actually did all the PowerPoint slides too, which made it was pretty cool with the ribbons and whatnot. But I'm actually showing you some of the things that we use to socialize the awards program to our internal stakeholders and our sellers. So the way that we kind of position is, the Experience Maker Awards, it's a global program that showcases and delivers Adobe's vision for, the tagline for it was changing the world through digital experiences, right? Using our Adobe Experience Cloud solutions. Who could apply for the program? Could be practitioners, could be leaders, any industry, as long as they use our technology. And we also had some specific goals. Like we wanted to be able to increase our submissions by 30%. We also wanted to integrate Workfront and their Lion Awards as part of this whole program. We wanted to expand the SPIF program so it reached a global audience. And then we had very specific outcomes we want to achieve, right? It's like recognizing, celebrating, amplifying the customers that are doing things, spark inspiration, helping us, identify more customer advocates, fueling our story engine and pipeline, all that kind of good stuff that we know is part of, a strong customer marketing experience that we want to showcase to our customers. So
Kevin,
this was the awards. Oh,
did
sorry.
the name of the awards program change every year, or was it just the theme that changed?
The theme changed every year. Yeah.
Okay.
So this was always the name of the program. So it went from Revy Awards, the Imagine Awards, like I said, and then it became a combination of bring it all together. And then when I was mentioning earlier where we had to kind of slice and dice and bring the award categories into one from 35 down to 15 or 16, this is what we kind of did. We had each of these 13 global award categories, and then we also created 3 regional award categories. So in each of these, the regional counterparts would have an experience maker of the year, which is like the practitioner. We had celebrating the team of the year, and then the executive. And each of these were in each of these 4 regions that you see here. To give you a sense of like, what were some of these specifically, like the ambassador was kind of highlighting, who was like a tremendous advocate that, kind of showcased our technology and helped others kind of learn and grow. Analyzer was very specifically around data and insights. Change Maker was actually a social good campaign and a social good awards program that looked at how customers were using Adobe technology to influence, broader economic and community-led initiatives. So that was actually kind of a cool thing. Transformer was like people going through digital transformation, using our technology, how they're refining their MarTech stack, etc. And this gives you kind of a sense of what was the timeline that we actually deal with. I did mention like, give yourself at least 6 to 8 months, ideally. Our program ended up being a year-long cycle. So we just kicked it off, or we just closed it out this past Wednesday. There's usually a little bit of a lull period as we start to get content and collateral developed, but it becomes a very much a year-long initiative. And so typically, what happens is we'll have a prep session within December. The fiscal year for Adobe is also, that's the beginning of the calendar year. And then they give, essentially 3 or 4 months to kind of think about what do we need to do to change sort of the identity of the brand, the themes, the categories, have that kind of locked. And then we start to open up submissions in the following quarter. And the submission period is usually about 45 days. Some people, there's always a opportunity to kind of extend it. And we usually do that. And you'll find that, and for you guys that also run awards programs, it's usually people procrastinate until the last minute before they actually submit an application. That's like every company I've ever worked at, that's always been the case. And so this usually ends up getting pushed back a little bit, maybe until like May. Then we go through a whole process of identifying and selecting the finalists. Then we do the awards program, and that's when we showcase the winners. And there's different ways you can incentivize them to get them to show up, because the thing that sucks is if the person doesn't show up to accept their award, it's kind of a little bit of it doesn't like impact experience too much, but it's like ideally you obviously want them to accept it. And so that's kind of the whole planning phase. And the promotional areas, these are some things that we actually did to drive submissions. So we gave people very specific, 1 slide examples, with all the information that they need to have. What was the eligibility for the type of customer we were accepting? So we basically said that, if you want to submit a customer nomination, here's the SPIF details. And it basically broke out to who was eligible. Any account team, sales, customer success that, wanted to nominate a customer, they totally could. There were spiff awards. We did 2,000 per winner nominated, and then 1,000 for a finalist nominated. And so there was an opportunity that they could get an amplifier where, if they had a customer that was a finalist and a winner. And then we also had accelerators if they submitted an application early. I will say this didn't really move the needle too much. We still had folks that took their time when it came to submitting applications on behalf of their customer. But I think the main point with all this is make it very easy to follow. Like it has to be, the rules need to be very simplified as far as what is the step 1, 2, and 3 that they need to do to get their customers to nominate themselves, or they can nominate on their behalf. And then as far as like what the submission process looked like, we had a website. I'll actually show you. Was this was like a custom website that we created. We worked with an agency called Labor. All of it was from the application itself to the videos that we produced. All of it kind of lived here. And so what I'm showing you on the back end is what the nomination form looked like. So this was like the basic form, company profile, individual. We would also send them reminders, and we would have a notification pushed out if they only, completed part of their application. So that's kind of another thing you can think about, of just how do you make sure that the customer completes it full stop. And if there's stuff that they missed out, you can kind of remind them. We also did a leaderboard nomination that we sent out pretty regularly to our sales counterparts in the field, and that actually helped kind of drive more momentum behind it. And then the thing that I was kind of joking about earlier was just the fact that the most stressful time is when no one actually applies for your awards program early on, or there's like a lull and there's a gap, and you're just kind of waiting until people fill it out. But this gives you kind of an example. Over the life cycle of an awards program, we typically have this like hockey stick that happens, and usually it's like towards like the tail end, and this is basically like the days left in the submission window. But we typically have like the huge spikes towards the end over the last several days of before we close it out. And so always like the most stressful period. So that's kind of the promotional piece. And then from a judging phase standpoint, the way that we kind of approached it is we identified who the judging team should be. So typically these are your customer facing orgs, the ones that also are technical, they understand the solutions. So folks like within your product organization, PMM, your team specifically could be your PR and comms counterparts. You have to kind of be careful with like account teams, because they might try to influence the decisions of the awards. And usually if it's someone a little bit more senior in the organization, it makes sense as opposed to like the actual reps. And then also giving your executives kind of oversight on like who the finalists and winners are, so they can make any last minute vetoes or changes as necessary. But generally speaking, from a scorecard standpoint, it's really helpful to have a set of criteria that you're looking for on what is essentially kind of like a quality submission. So we worked with an agency called Big Sky. I've used them a lot over the past several years, and they actually helped us cull down. At one point, we had 450, almost 500 applications from customers, and we actually had them help us boil it down to who are the top 10 to 12 submissions in each awards category. And then we were able to give it to our judges, so they didn't have to read through hundreds of submissions, but they could look at sort of the top ones and then use a scorecard to identify who should be, in that finalist pool, the top 3 finalists. And we always had 3 finalists. It was never a 4th. It was always, we had to try to drive down to 3 as a consensus point, and then only 1 winner. It was never a tiebreaker. So these are kind of things we use. So, is this applicant creating company-wide impact? Are they driving clear and measurable results? Are they driving revenue? All those types of things that we would typically look for. That also could highlight a great customer story too. We also had what we call a Maverick Award category, and this is sort of like a People's Choice Award. So we had it built into the website where people could basically vote for it. Could be internal folks, could be customers, could be prospects, etc. But they could essentially see who the 3 finalists were. We'd give them a deadline of when they need to vote for, and it was basically who had the most submissions and votes. And so that was kind of a fun thing that we've always done. And then as far as the live experience, what we did to kind of kick off the process is we would send out an email to all the finalists, letting them know, here's, we're excited to announce you, we need some details from you. And this is usually when we get like the contact infos, the specifics, making sure they show up for tech checks, all the stuff that usually takes a lot of wrangling to get done. We would send them, these types of information. We would create a profile card where we get like their headshots, titles, all the kind of details. And then we would also, because most of the people were also at home at this point versus being back in the office, we then send them a celebratory gift box. And this included a couple kind of cool things, very cool packaging, gave them like chocolates, glasses that they could have champagne with their family. We also would give out a trophy or a kind of a medal, and just little like tchotchkes that they could celebrate live as part of the, when they were on video. And then from an event experience standpoint, what we actually use is we use Van Wagner, which was a production company, and we would stream it live on LinkedIn, but it actually was hosted on Zoom and it would be pushed out to LinkedIn. So that was kind of like the most, just kind of wrangling people there. And then from the actual experience, this is kind of what we would do. We would have two different versions based on time zone. So usually there was one 5 p.m. Pacific time frame, and then they would do another one the next day to capture sort of the immediate audience. And we would have our guests, like, I don't know if you guys know Katie Martell, but she's kind of a fun personality within the tech space. She was our MC for the past, I think, 4 years that we did this. And she was the MC this year as well. And then from the experience itself, like we used to host it, virtually, and this was actually in the Adobe office, and they would put like a wrap around the entire building or in across the room. And it was kind of cool just to kind of see the different angles, but we would have the production crew film it, and it would just get pushed out live. And then we would be able to kind of showcase the winners of that experience. And this is what it would actually look like when it actually showcased the individual. So it'd have the 3 finalists. They would put the logo, the title. We also try to put the nomination of the company and who did that. So usually it's the partner. Like 90 or actually 60% of the submissions came from our partner ecosystem. And so this was kind of a cool way just to kind of nod, the partners that helped, make this possible. And then when the winner went live, we'd showcase the name, and they would do like this whole, they wouldn't do a speech necessarily, but they would, show the surprise and delight, because I think that was kind of a cool thing. And then the trophies themselves, like this was an evolution over the past several years, but the first year we did it, we had sort of like glass trophies, the typical like crystal, and it would have like the name etched. And then over time we evolved it a bit to be like this sort of like obelisk look. And they actually used to have a designer actually hand paint some of them too, like over the past several years, which is kind of a cool touch. And then they would put some like gloss and other things for accents. And then this year, if you look at some of the trophies, they actually made them white. They look like that here. So it's kind of cool just to see like the little dots of color and how it really pops. But this was kind of the trophy that we gave out. And then as far as I mentioned about musical guest entertainment, we had Jennifer Hudson one year, Leona Lewis, and then Adam Lambert last year. This year, I believe they had, they did the Phantom of the Opera cast. Like they actually, when they did the event experience in New York, they did like a little performance, which was kind of nice. And this was kind of like the reactions that we had. And this was like the Lion Awards that we did with when we had that acquisition. So that's kind of the whole event experience. And then as far as measuring and kind of like post-event, we looked at year-over-year submission growth. What does that breakdown look like from both industry regions? Who drove it from a partner, internal versus customer, because that also helped us look at where do we need to double down on the following year to drive more submission pipeline. We looked at ARR influence. So, which customers, how is this impacting retention, cross-sell, upsell, multi-solution customers. We used to have sort of like this advocate score that we would look at, who are customers that would be, future advocates or how much they love us. And then we also did a whole series with each of the winners, and Katie would do a video interview with them. It usually was about 15, 20 minutes. We would then boil it down into a, little bite-size nuggets that we'd then showcase on the website. We use it for social content. And then we'd also put together a kind of like a movers and shakers summary. And I think you might be able to see it. It's not here yet, but it would live on this website, and it would showcase some of the stories there and all the submission. Oh, here it is. It would look. Oh, it hasn't been published yet, but I'll send you guys a link to it later if you want. But it was basically kind of like a PDF of all the winner submissions, and we gave that to our sellers and other teams so they could kind of see it and use it as customer stories and evidence in the future.
Oh, nice. Kevin, there are a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Number one, did you come up with the name for the awards, the Experience Awards?
Did I specifically come up with that?
Yeah.
I wish I could take credit for that, but we had a exhaustive group of like folks from our brand, legal,
Of
customer
course.
marketing teams that all kind of came together to put that together.
Yeah. Okay. I just thought maybe because there's so much creativity to kind of like bring those ideas together. And then Shelly Ryder says this is a great resource for how to implement an award program, but at a higher level, where would something like this fit in an org's overall advocacy program? At what maturity level, team size might a company explore something like this?
That's a good question. I would say I hate to say it depends, but it kind of does depend. Number one, I think you have to look at what are your primary objectives that you want to accomplish as an organization. Most customer marketing teams are being asked to do reference fulfillment, storytelling, building out additional content and collateral. An awards program can help you build your advocate base. It can help you identify and accelerate the number of stories that you produce in the future, but it is very time intensive. And I would say it doesn't have to be perfect either. Like I'm showing you, best case situation. If you had the budget, you had the money to create something exceptional. Not every team has that. And if you're a startup organization that has, only a couple thousand customers, you can do a down and dirty version of an awards program and still achieve the same type of goals and outcomes you need. Like I said, you can create a Microsoft form. You could do this effectively, with a shoestring budget if you need to. I've had to do that in the past. I think it just comes down to what's in it for you specifically that's going to help you showcase your own wins to your leadership team and to your customers and stakeholders. We use it also as a great pipeline generator for helping us identify influencers, customers that could be part of our champions program that we have, or we used to have at Adobe, and then also kind of fuel in other types of initiatives. But from a maturity standpoint, if you're a team of one, it may be kind of hard to kick off an awards program right out of the bat, especially if you have 5 other things that are priority number one at the same time. I don't know if that helps answer your question.
Yes, for sure. Oh, it did for sure. Thanks, Kevin. Plus, I'm getting lots of great comments in the chat too.
Cool. But yeah, that's pretty much the deck and the presentation. So I could, unless you guys have other questions, I could check out what you guys wrote in the chat.
No, those are the only questions so far. Dean Shaw had a question, but you answered it right as he was putting that in about customer awards programs for communities. Um, you're at F5 now. What are you doing an awards program there? And what would that look like if you were starting it today?
Yeah, so we're not doing an awards program yet. I would say our maturity at F5 is, if you had to think about it, like the crawl, walk, run phase, we are probably still in diapers in a lot of ways. And that's, I had to, coming from Adobe to F5, that was a little bit of a culture shock, to be honest, but we're still at the phase of kind of like building our infrastructure. It goes hand in hand with, like, when you think about an awards program, if you launch it too early and you don't have a thriving customer base, community, etc., it becomes very difficult to see success with an awards program because it's based on submissions, right? And typically you look at volume, you look at, do you have enough finalists to fit the bill for each of your award categories? And if you don't have enough, or if you have hesitation or doubt, it's just going to become much more complicated and challenging. And you never want to get to a point where you have to start begging people to apply. Like, that doesn't look good in any way. And you want people to win an awards program based on their merit, based on what they've done, and make sure that they're recognized properly. So for us, long story short, we haven't launched one yet.
No, that's helpful. I think there's so many companies that might want to do one, or they try to do one without enough of that foundation built, and it gets really messy.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have questions about awards? Really? None? Wow, I'm
All right, I
surprised.
have, well, no, oh, I have a
That's
few,
fine with me.
yeah, I've got a few. So I'm curious about, so we are starting our in-person conferences this year, which is exciting. Planning to have one in the US and then one or two overseas. I'm curious, either Kevin, for you or for somebody else. Obviously, to have an awards presentation in person is amazing and ideal. If you have multiple in-person conferences by geo, do you just have like this sort of replicate it by geography? Just sort of wondering how others have thought about having multiple conferences and having awards in different geographies.
Yeah, so the way that we did it, so we had a North America virtual broadcast, and then because of like the time zone differences, we would then do one for EMEA. This year, what they actually did was, because we have sort of like Adobe has a rolling summit that they do in each of the theaters. They did have the award ceremony as part of the experience in each of those summits, essentially. So they would bifurcate it a little bit. So anyone that was based in North America, they would celebrate them at that event. And then if they were based in EMEA, they would do it there, APCJ, etc.
Based on
That's
where
what
the
I've seen too.
person is, the company, like we have a lot of companies headquartered in Europe, but our contacts are in.
Yeah, I mean, we did it based on
Sort of figure it
where
out.
the individual was located.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did it with who's accepting the award.
Yeah.
Mm. Daniel, did you
yeah,
have a question or
logistically.
just something to add?
Well, I had something to add. At my last job, we actually separated it out to regional awards, mostly because one, that allowed us to have judges that were like internal judges that were plugged into the communities in each of those different areas. Because the way we viewed it was the community in the Americas was different than the ones in Europe, that was different than the ones in Asia. Also, and perhaps it's different for Adobe because it's been around for so long, but from our perspective, the maturity of the customers and the maturity of the community in those areas was different. So if we had a global awards program, it was harder for those people who were less mature to be on an even playing field with those who had been adopting it longer. And so we did it that way. And also, since we took a large conference and split it up into sort of regional ones, it allowed us to celebrate those folks and not have to have them travel from longer distances. Now, that's not to say that the folks who were in Japan who won for APAC didn't have to travel to Australia, but that's a lot closer than traveling to somewhere, in New York or Vegas or whatever. So it
Yeah.
allowed us to do it that way.
Totally. That's something that I think is really important. It's like what's best for the customer and where they're based and making it easier for their travel.
Daniel, did you end up with something like an overall excellence award so that the winners of the awards in the regions then got to say, yo, I'm better than everyone else?
In terms of,
Were the awards the same so that, and then you could take the best of the best?
no, we didn't really necessarily have a best of the best, but we did, once we were through the whole tour, we wrote a full sort of release blog post or what have you that recognized, hey, these were our regional winners across everywhere. So they were celebrated worldwide, but to their, regions, they were sort of celebrated in person there.
Okay.
We then, when we went to virtual for 2020, because we also had to separate that out, since we had no physical thing to do, we did have a rolling keynote, since it was like a follow the sun virtual conference. The one thing that changed at the end of each sort of regional keynote, we had a regional award ceremony for that region. So if you watched it in Americas, you saw that one. If you watched it during APAC time, you saw that one. So they still got celebrated within their specific region, so they could feel as though it was part of, it was like they were celebrating among their regional peers.
Cool.
We have a question in the chat from Nina. Do you only select customers as finalists, winners who have given you permission to list them as a customer, public, given logo permission? Would you ever anonymize an award for the sake of the relationship? We have a few major brands that we'd love to give recognition to, but because of strict PR policies, we are unable to share externally that they are customers.
Yeah, so good question. We had in our submission form, we asked them up front, like, do we have your permission to use your logo? Is this validated? Did you check with your legal PR team before even submitting? There was some situations because we did have partners that would submit on behalf of their client. We did ask them to make sure that they double checked that they had the approval. Sometimes they didn't. But to answer the question, anyone that was a finalist and winner, they had to be on the record saying that they could be named by a company, and they'd have to share like some of the results in their submission. There's one
And
case,
we
I think.
didn't.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, Kevin. We let people win an award because for us, the awards are initially internal amongst your peers, right?
Yeah.
So the idea is they could win the award. They could choose not to be publicized in social media and through the website.
Yeah, I think there's varying degrees for sure, like people's appetite and what they're willing to do. But at a bare minimum, we said they have to give us logo permission. They have to be okay with doing a press release that indicates what actually went in the submission. And yeah, a couple other things, but they didn't necessarily have to do a story with us. That was optional. Most of them want to do it anyways because they went through all the trouble and they want to be recognized.
That makes me wonder about, like, as the customer or somebody in the industry, I want to see what the best people are doing, but in that case, you might miss out on a lot. Do you feel like you did, or enough was in the nominations that you got a good picture of what the best users were?
Usually, yeah, it's always hard. Like some of the submissions that even didn't make it to like the finalist rounds were still really good. But that's, I think, also why like the judging panel is so important. Like it helps to remove some of the, the bias that we have. Like, if we have a good relationship with this one account, we think they should be the winner, but their story and their metrics are not strong enough to kind of warrant them being a finalist or a winner. Or there might be some trade-offs. Like maybe they're going to have to be a finalist, but they're not going to have to be a winner. And it helps. And usually those same customers apply multiple years. And they get kind of not aggressive, but they get kind of competitive about it. Like they want to know like what was missing from their submission to warrant them winning. So they try to apply again. and they ask for feedback and stuff. But that's like the ideal type of customer you want.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. It's like kind of almost like applying for a job and getting turned down and being like, "Hey, what did I do?
Yeah,
what can I do better next time?"
yeah.
Let's see. Dean, did you want to share anything about that awards program that you did?
Oh, no, I just threw it. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, like 6, 7 months into my program, I just did a really bare bones, kind of on my own. I was kind of a one-man gang. And it really served a few purposes. One was to just create engagement. The other was to thank those super fans, those early adopters of my program, the champions, the advocates, all of that. And then the other one was because I knew the next year I was going to do a more formal program, and I kind of wanted a test run to learn and all of that. So I looked at Kevin's with Adobe, and I'm going, oh man, that's like a super serious awards program. Mine was just janky put together, and it kind of served a different purpose, I suppose.
I mean, like I said, you could do the down and dirty. There's nothing wrong with it. Like
Dean,
at
was
the end
there
of the
just
day,
one of you
people
at the
get
time?
I pretty much was the whole judging committee, nominating committee, award committee. I was kind of the whole thing, which again gives you a lot of flexibility and agility to kind of test and do things right. It's kind of like when you get into a situation like Adobe, there's a lot of people in the room that can maybe change the way you want to do it. When you're a gang of one, you can make all the rules and move very quickly. And as Kevin said, make it really simple and bare bones and just see how it goes, so that when you do it for real, you kind of had that experience under your belt.
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
I honestly, I could probably just spend an hour talking about the collaboration behind this
Yeah,
for Adobe specifically, because the more companies I
amazing.
talk to, the bigger there is a lack of like filling that gap of knowing how to do this collaboration well in customer marketing. Not that everybody has a lack there, but just there is some lack. And I think it'd be interesting to hear more about that collaboration, because you must have talked to so many people across several teams. And I'm sure they all were just really jumping to the bit to do everything you wanted.
There are some, I'll just say there are like some crunchy moments for sure. Lots of personalities that you got to deal with. And, there's sometimes there could be territorialness that happens.
Yep.
People feel like they own it, and we're all just like trying to collaborate to drive like the right outcome. But, you do get a lot of different folks that you have to work with, for better or worse.
I can imagine.
Hey,
We
Mary,
probably
I wonder if
Go
we could do, I wonder if you could do like an ask in the community for people that do have awards, to if they're willing to share like their landing page and what their awards are and what the awards are for. I know for me, what I'm debating, I haven't been asked to do this yet, but we're doing an in-person conference and I feel like it'd be a good idea, but it's also a big commitment. But one of the things I struggle with is like, what am I awarding people for? So like we make subscription billing software. So you can't like use our product to create something great. Like we're very much like it's the back end. And so it allows you to very easily, manage subscription billing, which is great. But like I'm struggling a little bit with compelling award categories. In my last company, we had like I forget what we called them, but like someone who was new to the industry and a veteran, and somebody in this role and someone in that role. So like I've done that before, but also would love some inspiration. I'm curious for people whose products don't allow their customers to like create things. Thank you, Alexia. I'll take a look at that. But you just sort of it's like the back end software for things. I'd be curious to see what other kind of categories people come up with.
That's a good question. I think Zora has sort of a similar use case. Their customers are on the back end, like tinkering with stuff. I want to say that they did an awards program fairly recently too.
Here's
I'm
what mine looks like.
see. Oh,
This is what mine looks like.
Rebecca,
did-
what are
We did
the
organizational awards and personal awards, Rebecca. So
Ooh.
we created, we aggregated, the first 2 years we did awards, we had like 15 awards, which is way too much for our customer base. So we aggregated things into a smaller batch this year. So we've got overall excellence. And for us, it is about creation. So there's the best learner experience, best innovation using extensibility, and then business impact and power launch, which is how fast could you implement V1.
Awesome. Thank you
And then
all.
I created individual awards. Founders awards are going to go to people that were part of my community in beta.
Mm.
And then we're using the community tools to identify innovators, product experts, and helping hands.
Yeah, that's cool.
So
We had it was like a sister award, so we did we had like champion of the year awards that was like individual. We had like user group leader of the year. And I think like community member of the year, but those weren't necessarily part of the main award show, but we would still, the identity would be kind of similar. We would just give it out at different periods of time.
I will take a list of these links, make a list of these links for you, Rebecca, and share them in the community. And if I do not post early next week asking for others to share their links, please go ahead and remind me. Sometimes I forget what I want to do after the weekend has happened. So yeah, you can do that. Well, thank you for jumping on with us, Kevin, and sharing. It's always fun to learn and pick your brain and see what you have to say about all of these popular topics in our world. We only have a couple minutes left. If anybody else wants to share something quickly, can go ahead.
Just want to say, Megan, or sorry, Mary, I was talking to Megan on my team earlier, but Mary, thanks for hosting these, and just appreciate the time, just like connecting with all of you guys. And I'm pretty accessible too if you have any like specific questions and other things too.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, well, we can hop off a couple minutes early today, and I will see you all in the community. Have a good weekend.
All right,
Thanks,
see ya.
Mary. Thanks,
Thanks.
Kevin.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.